on to the LEC studio where I'm joined by LS to talk about his favorite topic, why renekton is bad. And I know what you're thinking, you're catering too much to LS, renekton is not that bad. Well, we've got some stats for you. In the LEC this year, peak ban percentage of 74.5%, and the record is 13 wins, 15 losses. So the stats say that LS is right. So first up, why do you hate renekton in general? Let's start with that.
In general, I don't like champions that the onus is on them to get ahead. I think that there's other champions that are better if the argument is that you're going to be sort of like a defensive lineman or something for your team composition. Obviously, there are items that are propping him up a lot better, but I think generally, if you really look at the context surrounding a lot of his games, it's really bad. Now, on the topic of his stats are really bad in LEC. They're very high in other areas, but there's a very big deviation between the regions. So stats alone shouldn't be the crux of the argument for people wondering.
Hey, they should never be the crux of the argument for anything, right? So let's then look at the facts and look at this draft specifically, where, of course, he got picked into the Karma in the top lane. Talk to me about that specific lane matchup, but then also both the team compositions and how he fits in there.
The really weird thing to me is renekton, he came in on R5, and if you look at the opponent's team composition, they're really close quarter combat. They're short range, very brawlery. You have a lot of shields. You have Xayah that can uplift herself, whatnot. There's Alistar, there's Hecarim. Ryze is really good in a mid-rangey type of team composition. On the flip side, for Vitality, they already had defensive linemen inside of Rel and Udyr. They had Tristana and Victor, which is outranging everyone on the side of Schalke. So why did they go with renekton, which rewards Schalke's team composition, but also loses to not only Ryze, but also Karma and lane? Doesn't make any sense to me.
What would be your counter suggestion, knowing that you have Karma as a lane matchup, but you also have things like the Gnar taken off the table, the Jace perhaps even in the Shen?
So the interesting thing is Karma, I think in her current state with all the buffs that she's been getting, just as well as the nature of the champion, she has two different ways to really itemize. She has different rune selections. It's really hard to beat Karma. I think only off the top of my head, Aurelia actually silences her in laning phase. And even that is sort of a skill matchup. Aurelia obviously favored inside of it, but Karma doesn't really have a lot of lane counters in a vacuum. So if you're looking for something like that, that's pretty much where you have to go. You could just handshake it with another enchanter up in top lane as well, but then you get people that are starting to roll their eyes at an enchanter meta up in top lane. It's a pretty rough situation, but any other generic tank would just be better than renekton.
All right, let's take a look then at the lane state. As we know, Karma can be oppressive in that situation in any lane she's in. Why specifically in this matchup?
So renekton obviously needs to stay on top of his lane opponent in order to have value. He has the gap closed with Slice and Dice, but the problem is that Karma's shield invalidates his initial trade pattern, but then the tether that she has on the W, the innate lane sustain that she has, and the fact that her items cost less than him means that it's really hard for him to keep up in lane. I mean, there's just so many consistent trade patterns that you saw unfold inside of the laning phase, and if you play this lane out 100 times over, it's going to look very similar to what we saw here. Sometimes renekton will win, though, if he manages to clip Karma or some support from the jungler, but generally, he can't really do anything against her spacing, and her kit just thematically answers them. And then in the later stage team fights, her mantra-empowered E on all the teammates, the fact that it's a mid-rangey type of team composition for Schalke just means that renekton has no place being picked.
I see. So it was a combination of, first off, you don't like the champion in many situations, but it was also not good in the lane and also wouldn't offer as much as the Karma in the team fight positions. I think I gathered that correctly. The Kia player of the game was Limit with 58% of the votes. He doesn't often get that praise, especially not as the Kia player of the game. What did you think of his Alistar?
I mean, the Alistar, I love the highlight that we chose here. This one was a little bit of a five-head play by Limit. Crownie getting told to sit down. And just all in all, I mean, he was really on top of a lot of the engages, a lot of cancels on the Alistar here in this game. And I think it was just a really good performance to get the ball rolling for them.
It was definitely from Schalke also as a whole, as now we've seen 2 games from them this week, and obviously they're looking to fight for playoffs. Where do you think they're going to land, knowing that they're going to play XL tomorrow?
Well, the matchup against Excel is going to be really interesting. But, I mean, first, I do want to see what Excel does against Rogue. Yeah. If Excel continues to draft the way that they can draft with the late-game scaling, the insurance policies, etc., I'm almost inclined to think that they're favored.
Ooh, there we go. Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because the stakes could not be higher for that next game. XL are going to face off against Rogue, and it is now a direct elimination match. If they lose, XL are out of playoffs completely. Let's see if they can stay alive.